All right, good morning. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I know we've got a few more new faces here for day two. Welcome everyone again for this week's Pharmacy X Marketing Summit. We're gonna just jump right into it. Obviously, we've got a busy day. Thank you all again for your engagement and questions and obviously interaction throughout the sessions yesterday. That was great. I know it was a long day. I think we had 15 individual sessions. We've got, I believe, 10 today. So my job is to keep us on time, which I'm not doing a very good job of right now. However, we will be regimented in our timekeeping today, at least anyway. So I'm going to just jump straight into our first. We've got 4 sessions before a morning break, and our first two speakers are Shin Sawada and Abigail Canlas from Otsuka, obviously locally in the Pennsylvania and Princeton. So I'll leave it at that. In similar comparison to yesterday, interesting facts about Shin. Separately from his professional career, he owns and operates a farm, which is very impressive. And Abigail is jiu-jitsu trained, so
Don't mess with her.
Yeah. So just wanted to position that. Shin and Abby will be presenting around the topic of product launch targeting with AI-driven insights for enhanced engagement. There'll be a little bit of time at the end for Q&A, so obviously raise your hands at the appropriate time, and we'll go ahead and mic the audience. And without further ado, please join me in welcoming Shin and Abby as our first speakers this morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
And he definitely highlighted the whole jiu-jitsu things. Please, I'm not as good as what might be imagined there.
She has a little cut on her finger this morning.
Right.
We don't know how that happened. So Shin Sawada, and again, we have a small farm and we have a couple cows and things like that, but that's something I do outside the work. Today we are here to talk about product launch. I heard yesterday's sessions are very interesting, and hopefully this will kind of create another little different topic that maybe you didn't cover yesterday, and it's really specifically around targeting with AI-driven insights for enhanced engagement. That's something topic we want to talk. We want to start first with a little bit different way, so just gonna advance this, hope it works. Oh. Somehow, if it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world, but would that audio work? So there's a lot than I thought, but so that's the piano, and we wanted to first start our conversation using the piano. So I love piano. I don't know how many people love piano, but I really love the sound of piano, and you can have different people playing the same song and music, and it sounds different. Different pianos sound differently too. Some people characterize certain pianos to sound like a little bit dark. Other could be brighter sound. And of course, you have different styles of piano, different number of keys, and so on. But just wanted to imagine first that if you could just imagine yourself as either a piano salesperson or maybe going in to buy a piano at a store. I have only been to the average store to buy a piano, so I really don't know the fancy store so much. But when I go to walk into an average music store, they may just ask you about what kind of piano you're interested in, perhaps like a electric, stand-up. You may ask for the color, talk a little bit about the brand. If you mention the baby grand or anything like that, they might be a little surprised because you don't really get that conversation nearly as much. But talk a lot about the products, and then maybe eventually you buy a piano. So that's kind of, at least for me, that's how the average transaction goes. But just kind of changed it a little bit And then imagine that now you are first hour or more of the conversation with the salesperson more about yourself or about the customer. So if you're a salesperson, you're just talking about the customer. So asking about, what her dream might be. It could be an adult child. What's your dream? What do you want to do with the piano? Maybe they want to play the first music for his wife, or maybe play for as a concert pianist. Every dream is very important for that person. And then you may also ask what kind of songs they like to play, or music they like to play, or maybe the personality of the person. Sometimes you can tell, does this person a little shy, or do they like the big sound, just a really something that they enjoy. And then spend a lot of time like that, over an hour, and then just offer them the perfect piano that matches that person. And do you think you'll buy, a little bit more, spend a little bit more on the piano? And absolutely, that's how she's considered one of the greatest salespeople of time. She sold a piano like that. She basically spent a lot of time, over an hour often, with each customer to get to know them and offer up the piano. And then she sold over $40 million worth of piano over her career. And, just really getting to know that person, having the great insights, and then offer up. In fact, she doesn't even consider herself as a salesperson. She considers herself as a piano matchmaker. And they just get to know the customer, and then at the deepest level, and then offer up the piano that matches perfectly. So that's one of the importance of insights in selling.
It's so important because we've been doing this as sellers and as consumers and sellers of products. Customer insights are just ingrained in what we do, and it's a perfect example of doing it great. I love the matchmaking component there. To continue on this sort of musical theme, let's take us back to, for those in the room who were in the 80s, right? A record store near you. There's a movie that's coming to mind, perhaps in all of your minds, where in the 80s you would perhaps walk into these record stores, perhaps have learned about a song on the radio. You kind of know some of those lyrics. You walk into a store, you have some general knowledge of the music that you like, but you walk into this big, almost library of records. You have one salesperson there to help you, right? But they don't necessarily know you personally. They ask you a series of questions and will generally point you in that right direction. Minimal insights, but still trying to pay off that service.
Yeah, it's usually my experience was always if they know the most popular song of the time, that's great, but otherwise you just that direction and
go there.
Figure it out.
Rock and roll,
yeah.
Heavy metal, rap, right? I feel like that was the 80s sort of breakdown. So fast forward to today, right? Everybody knows this. You have your musical apps. That guy's so delighted, so happy. And he's happy because we give these musical apps all of the insights that we have, that we listen, the music that we like, the different genre of music. And even it opens up opportunity for subtype music, a combination of hip hop and electronica, right? And so it creates so much more opportunity. But then our expectation of these musical apps is to then suggest and recommend and on demand provide the individual songs that are on. It is an expectation. I'm giving you information to expect all that back, and our expectations are that much higher. But at the end, super happy about my music. When I get in the car, I know exactly what to do. It knows exactly what to do, and I think it could suggest a little bit more. I don't know why my kid is actually all over Taylor Swift still, because I feel like that was so last year, but Taylor Swift is still threaded in my music app. But it is something that I want it to continue to learn about me. So expectations are there.
It's so strange too, because if back in the 80s, if I walked at the record store and if they start to offer you, hey, you want to listen to this song and so on, so much about me, then I would kind of feel weird, but we get so used to this kind of environment where somebody else knows so much about you enough that they can offer you what you may like to listen in the morning or Sunday morning or whatever it might be, is very interesting.
Yeah.
How much it's evolved.
It's the aggregation of data, right? So how does it go into pharma? We're here to talk about product launch, right? And we are in pharma. And that, yes, when you think about customer experience, it is something that we always want to match the consumer because we're all consumers in our everyday. But I guess the question that we should be asking of ourselves is, do we have that customer level data? Do we understand where our professionals who actually support those patients, what are those pain points? And do we have that data at an individual level to be able to provide customer delight and loyalty? Because you have to kind of tie that straight through in your strategy. Okay, so this is where audience participation kind of comes into play. By a show of hands, who has customer level data? Nobody has customer level data? Come on, don't be shy. Customer level data. Who leverages customer level data for their planning? Planning. And I think there are a couple of agency partners in the room too. I mean, your clients also have customer data, of which that helps you plan for them. So feel free to participate, right? Third question by a show of hands. Who's leveraging that customer data on an individual level? Again, we want to be that great salesperson. Oh, they are. And great level salesperson, just to like that pianist salesperson is, and also like that Spotify is. But who's doing that to enhance engagement? That's the strategy, enhance engagement. That's good.
That's great.
That's the opportunity, because that's the recipe by which we all have to put together to enhance our customer experience.
And then I wanted to first, I also talk about some of the traditional like sales situations. So I'm talking about sales representatives here. And when we try to use the data, at least traditionally, and develop a call plan, we know a lot about these customers at the aggregate level very often. And we probably have some different segments of these customers. Maybe we have 3 or 4 different segments. And we know about these segments very well. I'm sure that pharma, healthcare, like you spend a lot of money to research these customers, you know a lot. But where things start to get a little bit less is at the individual HCP or provider level, where we might have data about the script writing behavior, that kind of things, but about the insights, what's on their mind, what's most important to them, some of the challenges they might be facing, they start to get thinner and thinner. Like maybe reps may know, but oftentimes we, I'm kind of looking at now from the marketing team and trying to direct the sales team, we don't necessarily have that information to be able to tap into traditionally. Other thing is that timing, and if you're familiar with a lot of these co-planning process, say if you're following trimester and say you get 4 months or so, by the time the end of the trimester comes, the data you used to build that is probably close to 6 months old. It's a very old data that you're reacting to, or the reps are reacting to. So, that kind of gets even more important for the launch, which is the topic of today, launch setting, because the first 2 months, the second 2 months, to maybe 6 months later, things have changed so much. So if you're reacting or using the data that was 6 months old, you're sort of like so yesterday, So again, those are some of the challenges that we have in a traditional approach in product launch. And actually, it probably doesn't have to be product launch for any products. That'd be the downside of the traditional approach.
You were like in a record store.
Kind of like, yeah.
Okay. So what did we do? We actually took all of we really wanted to make sure that we're putting those insights into action. So we put all of our data in a data lake or in the data brain. And for every single sort of Sparkle, there is a bit of a feature from a customer level point. And we did a whole AI experiment to then be able to structure ourselves and operationalize how we can bring those insights to action. Very willing brand lead here, very willing brand lead who actually saw the opportunity, was able to sort of pull through how this capability can support a launch. It was really quite incredible. But in order to operate, you have to really kind of operationalize the data and really translate that straight through.
And then the reps are quite, so it didn't happen overnight. Of course, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but the feedback was incredible. One of the reps said that, hey, I've been trying to talk to this customer for months, and she kept saying that no, she's too busy. But this AI-based insight said that she's most likely concerned about this particular topic, and he kind of started off the conversation, and she stopped, and they gave him a lot of time, and then wanted to try the product. Another rep said that her customers keep talking about how timely she is when she bring up to certain topics to them. Other ones said, hey, we keep finding these customers with a lot of potential that are very much willing to write. And another one that I heard was that, hey, some of the insights that these AIs are providing, I would have never thought that I could get it. I don't think I can get it on my own either. I mean, so over time, the reps may generate like knowledge of the customers, but some of the insights are so probably difficult to find on their own. So it's quite amazing results.
Yeah. So Shin, number one, I love partnering with you, so thank you. Thank you for your partnership. Can you talk, you mentioned the field, can you talk a little bit about how you translated the capability to how it aligning to your business strategy? Because that's so key, right? Versus I want to do an omnichannel thing, and then I've got my business thing that I've got to do. Well, the two are the same. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so to me, it was not so much of the disconnect between the business strategy. I knew that the shortcoming of the traditional approach. So when the idea came up, I was very excited to learn. Of course, wanted to make sure that because we're going to change the whole sales team to follow something different is a huge deal. So wanted to make sure that everything looked right. Abby and her team ran so many different numbers and cuts and my bunch of questions, but and made some tweaks, but they all came out at the end very good. And I was very convinced. And I was also, now that I became I guess, convinced and trying to convince other people, other marketers, the people on my team and others that, hey, looked at it, I think this is good. And that became the job that I had to do, but it was quite helpful.
That's sort of key for all of you trying to leverage more insights and put it into action. That change management on understanding what that data is. I sort of mentioned that we've got the data sort of centralized to then be able to prompt and be able to access, but you really need to translate that to those insights. That needs to be a thing. That's almost like a mini step. Those insights to action, right? And that requires a leading in of a brand lead, but then also the field leadership, right?
The way I also tried to explain to the field team was that just imagine that you have the company's giving you a personal assistant, AI assistant, who will basically go through all the data for you very frequently to tell you exactly what your customers are most likely interested in. So it's kind of like you can do this on your own, perhaps if you have like all weekends and all the computers to run the numbers, but this one, they'll do it for you, crunch it up, and they tell you exactly what you need to know. So that was, I think people start to get a little bit of that when I was initially explaining.
Helping them do what they do better.
Yeah.
Helping you do what you do better. Excellent,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Excellent. So what that requires, and I want to just double click a little bit on the field. Mm-hmm. We did do a tremendous amount. Do you love our AI generated images, by the way? They're pretty thank you, Copilot, rights of Copilot. But we did a whole training with the field. And it isn't just a training, it really is an immersion program. It's not just bringing them in to understand exactly what those insights are and just go do, and we're going to measure you on X, Y, and Z. It's truly understanding how the brand team took the data, translated it to insights, and how they then should be putting them into action. It requires a true more understanding than you normally would provide a field team, and it requires a good amount of leadership support, leadership at the highest level, and then also field leadership to create that space and that time for development of the field to be able to do that. So it's an important step. It's not just building it if they can come, building it and they will come. It's actually building them and how they will use it, and then how we will then evolve it. Because feedback is a gift. as we always say.
I actually wanted to build a little bit on what Abby's saying. Like it's not what Abby's team did was not just like a one-day training. It was probably a 2 months long. It's not like they're attending these trainings every day, but maybe one Friday you have a session, and then give them some time to think about it. Maybe talk amongst within the teams or whatever, but then come back again some other time, and then there's in person at one of the sales meetings. So it was deliberate, and it took them through the cultural aspect to the how they use the tools at the end. So it took a long time, but it just definitely needs that so that everybody embrace. I mean, towards the end, when they start to get to use some of the output, and initially was based on Excel base. It's no longer Excel based, but it was like a first launch, like a pilot group had to use Excel sheets, and some of them were excited. Hey, I called every one of these, checked every one of these, and I started to call some of these doctors in the little time that they had, and this works. So like some people are that excited, but that wasn't the case when you first invited in the very first session of
Sure.
this training. So
It's a shift in mindset,
Yeah.
for sure. But once they start to see the fruits of their own labor, then it's like, give me more.
Yeah.
And now we're like trying to optimize as quickly as we can too, and mobilize to be able to do that. So I can't stress upon that change management and making sure that people feel good and make sure that they know that robots aren't taking over the world today.
And one more thing about the feedback, Abby said, and I wanted to add one more. So now, obviously, sometimes those suggestions that AI makes may not be perfect. That happens too. And another thing that we mentioned to the field team is that, hey, this is just give them the feedback. Give the AI the feedback, and then say, analogy I use is that, hey, if you think about diner, and if you have a bad service, and if you want to provide a little card and feedback, you don't know whether the waiter is going to just toss it or somebody's going to read it. Even if they read it, they'll act on it. But the AI, if you give feedback, it will get incorporated. So the next month, when the new round of suggestions come out, it's incorporated. And I think that's something that resonated, so that it's in their best interest. If something odd happens, then they'll provide feedback, and then it'll continue to update.
Yeah. Also, a big slogan from the 80s would be like closed loop marketing. This is really closed loop marketing, right? I mean, come on, we're not reinventing the wheel here, but it is essentially what we've always wanted to do, but just better, because we have actual data to support it. Okay, so let's recap. Customer insights are our friends. We have to hold them close, hold them dear, hug them all the time. We have to operationalize those insights. Really, really important. I mean, we started with the field, but how this really expands, I know there's a lot of digital folks in the room. I don't want to call it non-personal, because it's not fair to the computers that they cannot be personal. So it's the digital channels that make sure that they can continue on to enhance customer engagement. This operationalized process, I'll say, allows us to really be able to do that, but we needed to really gut check with the humans first. And the people need to know how to put them into action. Taking the time to be able to train is so key. Not only train the field, but train the whole organization, frankly, to understand why this is important.
Yeah, I think leveraging field to do this was very helpful for us as well, because we spent a lot of money on the field team, so to help them with the AI is really helpful. But we talked a lot about how these technologies are able to help our engagement with our customers, or HCP in our case. Sorry, I keep bumping this, customers. But we also need to remember that behind each HCP are the patients and the caregivers or family members of those patients. And so by us able to go to these prescribers with the right insights at the right time, and then give them the right information so that they can make the right prescribing decisions. Ultimately, we're not only helping the physicians, but also the family members and patients. So just something that we continue to ground ourselves as we think about it, and I think it makes a huge positive impact overall.
Yeah, it's a testament to the questions that you ask of the data. If you're asking on behalf of the needs of a patient, and then the patient's at the center, and then it kind of builds off of that, then you know that that data is worth buying so that you get fruitful insights, so that you can pay that off for that professional, NPPA, physician who supports that patient. That's how it all kind of ties together outside of doing cool things with tech.
Thank you.
Did we have time for questions? Or?
Yes, we got time for a couple of quick questions before we move on. Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Shin and Abigail. Great talk, very much enjoyed the format. Thank you for that thoughtful presentation. And also congrats for your courage to kind of go with this approach, right? And so this is a question for Abigail. I think, talking about that courage, I think usually a lot of companies are hesitant to kind of, try something new, especially for a launch, right? So could you talk a little bit about what was the key for kind of convincing people? Was it like Shin as a strong champion, was that enough? Or was there a lot of pushback, from the BU head or, even higher to say, are you really sure you want to do that? And what were kind of ways how you worked around that to convince everyone?
Yeah, for us, I think prior to doing product launch, we've had the opportunity to have some successes in other areas in the business, right? But the challenge was product launch. So we had enough to bring Shin, his team along to then say, hey, it's your business decision. This is the opportunity, right? Because that's all you can kind of recommend. This is the opportunity. We'll stay close. It's a true sort of partnership. But we did have some built-in successes within the organization. So at least I'm coming to Shin, I'm like, I got this idea. Yeah. Do you want to do it? It wasn't just like that. So there was definitely like, this is what it is, this is what it isn't. It's going to be messy. Are you okay with that? But I'll tell you that where it's messy, we will log. I have a whole operationalized approach to then say, this is how we're going to optimize based upon the thing that you're seeing. But I think the opportunity is what I had to sort of sell a little bit.
Yeah, awesome. I'd like to see much more of that.
I think I was hearing about it, and I think there are a couple different products that they could try it, and I was like raising my head and like, I want to try this, but eventually, so I think we were able to try, so that's great.
Yeah, it's great. I always say, I was just telling Shin earlier, I was just like, I feel like we should clone Shin. Because I do think that if the mindset of the marketers have to shift, right? To be able to change or infuse the traditional way of thinking along with leveraging the technology to do what they do better, right? I think that that's something that we're going to see because tech is really sort of changing. And so I think that that pressure for the marketer to truly lean in and understand is going to be there across. Yeah. Oh. Oh. I can hear you, Jeanette.
Yesterday we had a great customer testimonial of someone who actually had a heart disease condition and how he got very engaged and talked about caregivers. And I know caregivers are a really important part of the equation. Can you help us understand, did you incorporate caregiver in your program for launch? And because you didn't call it out, I heard maybe HCP, maybe it was just in my listening, but love to understand more about how did you help your reps?
Yeah, so we didn't talk about that. There's a whole separate programs for caregivers, but that wasn't necessarily linked directly to AI. I think it'll eventually be linked, but so there was a different marketing programs for caregivers.
Yeah.
Just that today we're just focused on the HCP side of it.
I will say we have a ton of data on professional, right? We do. I think across the industry there's a ton of data on professional. So having that data work very hard for us, it makes sense to start there. Right? But the questions that you asked of the data to support those patients and those caregivers, based on current programs that are out there, that has to be part of this sort of transformation, if you will.
I think we went over
Thank
time.
you.
Right, yeah, let's give Abby and
thank you very much.
Shin a round of applause. Once we start the morning. Thank you. Thank you both.